All right, we're going to take you guys back a few years here. Steve and Spiro going back to September 26, 1980. And the next day would have been September 27th, 1980. And Spiro, we got on a flight in BWI. Wasn't probably called that then.
It was. I looked that up. It was not Friendship. They actually changed. I was surprised by this. I thought it was around that time, but they changed the name to BWI in 1973.
So it was already BWI. And where were we going? What was the deal?
We were going to Detroit, Michigan on Northwest Airlines, which also doesn't exist anymore.
And we were going to broadcast Towson State University football. It was TSU back then. We were broadcasting the game for WCVT, FM 89.7, which was a student-run station. But luckily for us, you could hear it all over Baltimore. Our friends, our family, our parents could listen. And you and I did a lot of the games, and we were going to see Towson and Wayne State University.
Correct. Now, another interesting tidbit. See if you remember this. The week before, you and I went to Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania to the Tigers play Slippery Rock. And I don't know if you remember this, but the power went out in the press box in the middle of the game. And back then, we didn't have any kind of alternate thing. We had to hook up our phone to a mixer, and the power went out. And I remember you and I handing the phone back and forth for about 5 minutes until the power went back on. So, college radio, baby.
College radio. We maybe have to do a whole video on that coming up.
That would be great.
In a series of videos we might do here, because we're bored in quarantine. We got to do something to keep ourselves interested. So, Spiro, and for context of the Orioles, it's about 10 games to go in the 1980 season. The Orioles, who played in the World Series the year before, 1979, are trying to get back to the playoffs, but they're in deep straits. The Yankees have about a 5 or 6 game lead. It's 2 divisions that go to the ALCS. This was long before 10 teams got to the playoffs like now, or more like they want.
No wild cards.
No wild cards. How to win the division. And the Orioles were in deep trouble because they're 5 or 6 out with about 10 to go. Doesn't look good. The reason we're tying this to the Orioles, where we're going to broadcast Towson football, is you and I realize Tiger Stadium is pretty close to where we're staying. And, oh, by the way, the first place New York Yankees are in town to play the Detroit Tigers. And we love the Orioles. We got to root for the hometown Tigers to beat the Yankees to keep the Orioles in this thing. And off we went.
Off we went. Exactly. And I don't think we had any clue what we were doing.
No.
I tried to remember the name of the hotel we stayed in, but I can't remember. I do remember our walk to Tiger Stadium. This is an old Tiger Stadium. The Tiger Stadium where Reggie Jackson hit the home run that hit the light stanchion in the All-Star game. But we passed Joe Louis Arena on our way to Tiger Stadium. So, it was downtown. And in downtown, if I remember very well.
Did we take a cab? We didn't walk, or did we walk?
Oh, we walked.
Yeah?
Yeah, we walked.
Troopers. So later we're going to talk about the Towson aspect of this and
Correct.
How this was about to end for us, but didn't quite end. That got a little interesting too. But it's kind of interesting on that Friday night. The Yankees won this game, which disappointed the local Baltimore kids, 7-5. And the Yankees would win 103 games. The Orioles would win 100 games and not make the playoffs in 1980. So last time the Orioles won 100, and I looked it up, Spiro, there have been 5 occasions since 1954 when the Orioles became a team where they won 100 games. The first 4 times, 69, 70, 71, and 79, they went to the World Series. In 1980, they didn't even go to the playoffs because just 2 teams went. The Yankees went, and Kansas City went with 97 wins, and the Orioles in their 100 wins stayed home.
And this game that we were at was the game that eliminated the Orioles from the playoffs. The Yankees clinched the division on this night.
Double whammy. Someone named Eric Soderholm, and I remember the name, hit a grand slam in that game, and the Yankees scored 6 runs in the 3rd inning. Do you remember that?
and the Tigers tried to come back. They tried. But what I remember the most from the two things I remember the most from this game. The one was that Tiger Stadium was a dump. I mean, I remember you and I walking out onto the concourse and walking around because we wanted to see the stadium, and there were parts that looked like nobody had been there since Ty Cobb had played. No paint, nothing. It was just a mess. The other thing I remember is that Alan Trammell got thrown out of the game late for arguing with the umpire, and Sparky Anderson didn't come out to save his player until after he'd been ejected. And I remember saying, Sparky, get out there, save Alan Trammell. You need him. He didn't. And the Tigers 7-5.
7-5. The Tigers came back with lost. The Orioles lost. I don't know when we figured out they had lost, but they lost that night at Cleveland, and they were like 5.5 out, and they were done, unfortunately. And the Phillies won the World Series in 1980. So, by the way, I want to show you this. Hopefully everybody can see it. That's not from 1980, but it's an Oriole photo album from 1979. The bird was the star. Your old Baltimore is on the inside cover. That's 1979.
Rich Dower's in the other picture with Mark Belanger.
Belanger and Dower. Now here's 1979 Game 7 World Series ticket that I sat in section 3 for $12. Game 7.
Section 3, that was a good section.
Willie Stargell, baby, that late homer. Years later, I would be broadcasting AAA in Richmond. Willie Stargell was a coaching instructor for Atlanta. He was in the next booth over in the press box. During a commercial break, I introduced myself and told him I'm from Baltimore, and you broke my heart in 79. And he just casually said, no offense, man, no offense. I said, don't worry, Willie, none taken. You were just doing your job. Let me show you another thing I found today, Spiro. I was looking up those tickets. Can you see the date on that Colt ticket?
December 24th, 1977. I was there. I was in the left field bleachers. I was there. Worst Christmas of my life.
That was for the young kids. Google it. One of the greatest football games ever played. Unfortunately, the Oakland Raiders beat the Baltimore Colts in double overtime. Goes to the post. As longtime Colts fans know. And we lost to the Raiders in the playoffs on Christmas Eve, ruined all our Christmases in 1977. But
and
getting back, Steve, go ahead.
It's funny because about a month ago, if you go to YouTube, you can get, it's not the full broadcast, but there's a lot of action in it. It's probably about a 40-minute game on that game, and it's all Chuck Thompson, which is great.
Is great.
And
anything with Chuck is great. All right, here's what we're going to do. Since we don't want this to go too long, we're going to cut to the chase of what made you write about this weekend recently, and then we'll end it with a couple Oriole notes. But so fast forward to the game. I don't even remember. Did Towson win or lose?
Lost 27-13.
So we lose to Wayne State, two 20-year-old kids, haven't been around anywhere much outside of Baltimore. Big to-do. We're on a plane flying, getting ready to go home. And then what?
Well, I remember we're standing in a line, and the football team was in front of us, and we were not part of their group. We had gotten the tickets through the radio station. We had not gone – like now when I broadcast Towson, I'm part of the group. You and I were not part of the group. We had individual tickets. So I remember Gordy Combs, who was the defensive coordinator then, eventually became Towson's head coach and is now my color commentator for Towson football. And he came up to us and he said, hey, are you guys okay? We were both like, yeah, we're fine. We're fine. So we get to the counter. And again, for the youngsters, anybody under the age of 45 probably, back then your tickets came in like a corrugated thing where they would rip your tickets out. So we hand the woman behind the counter our tickets, and she says, you don't have a return ticket. At which point you and I are looking at each other like, what?
Say what?
She says, you don't have a return ticket. And we were like, well, we're here. We're not on the plane. How can we not have a return ticket? They ripped our tickets at BWI, and here we are. Nope. Don't have a return ticket. Can't let you on the plane. At which point you started to get angry. I remember that. You started to get angry. I was a shy little boy, and you were not. And you started, I remember pointing your finger at that lady and saying, Miss, that plane leaves in an hour and we better be on it. We never got on that plane. So now.
Finger point didn't work.
Right. So now we're stuck and trying to figure out how the hell are we getting back to Baltimore? So we called Charlotte, the general manager of the radio station, and she was like, and she was a student, because like you said, it was a student-run station. So Charlotte,
right,
by sophomores at the time, sophomores, juniors, and she was a senior, so she was a general manager of the radio station. We called her, she was no help. And again, we had to go to payphones and put money in the payphone to make a long-distance call.
And keep in mind, it's 1980. 2 college students flying to do a football game was a big deal. It's like the station's budget for the year, I think. We shot flying to Detroit. Now we don't have a ticket to get home.
No ticket to get home. So finally, Charlotte says, well, if you guys buy tickets, we'll reimburse you. Between the two of us, we probably had in our bank accounts $40 to our name. We didn't have money, and tickets were expensive then. I remember I called my father, collect, and he agreed that as long as the radio station would reimburse him, he would buy the 2 tickets. So then we go to the counter, and when we get to the counter, the lady goes, they found your tickets at BWI, which was a bunch of you-know-what, Steve. They realized that they ripped our return tickets by mistake back there, and here we are. We have no tickets to get on, and now you really get angry. This is where you get
because there's their tickets, but the flight's long gone.
Correct. You get angry when she says, there are no more flights to Baltimore today. We can book you on a flight to Washington, D.C. And you looked at her, I remember like it was yesterday, again with a finger. You said, ma'am, we left from Baltimore. You're getting us back to Baltimore. I don't know how you're going to do it, but you're getting us back to Baltimore. And she was like, I can get you to D.C., but I can't get you back to Baltimore. So at this point, we're like, what do we do? What do we do? How do we get from whatever the Reagan Airport was called then, I guess National, how do we get back to Baltimore? We're not going to land till 10, 11 o'clock at night. So then they offered to put us up in a hotel and fly us out the next morning. And they had like an 8 a.m. flight. They had like a 10 a.m. flight. And I was like, I'm thinking, I don't want to get up that early. How about we leave on a 10 o'clock flight? You looked at me and you said, we're getting the hell out of this town as fast as we can. And the voucher, they put us up at a hotel and they gave us a voucher to eat at Bob's Big Boy.
Oh, huge.
The other thing was, at the time, the drinking age was 18. And you and I were probably about 20 at the time. We were 20 at the time, now that I think about it. So the drinking age was 18, except in Michigan. Was the only state in the country that you had to be 21 to drink.
You're kidding.
And get a beer. So we went to Bob's Big Boy. We ate our Bob's Big Boy hamburger, and off we went to the hotel.
Wowzer. We finally got home, and the rest is history. But that was a terrifying few minutes for the young kids from Baltimore. Finger pointing not working as well as we wanted it to.
Didn't work at all.
The counter folks in Detroit admitting they messed up.
Northwest Airlines, no wonder they're not in business anymore.
We got a whole Bob's Big Boy meal out of it. I mean, how could we have been mad about that? Yikes. Great story, Spiro. So, and by the way, in 1980, the Orioles had 2 20-game winners. They haven't had one since Mike Boddicker in 1984.
Scott McGregor and Flanagan.
The Cy Young winner.
Flanagan.
No, it was Steve Stone.
Steve Stone.
25-7. They had 2 20-game winners. The Cy Young winner, they won 100 games, and they didn't go to the playoffs because only 2 teams went, and the Yankees won 103 in their division. The Orioles won more than the other 3 division winners and sat home. It's kind of a footnote to Oriole history, and I didn't realize till I looked it up so we could do this interview, this chat, that they would have 5 seasons of 100 wins, and 4 times they went to the World Series, and they didn't in 1980. Pretty amazing stuff.
And think about that, Steve. Five times in a 12-year period, they won over 100 or more games. That's pretty impressive. 5 times in 12 years.
Very impressive. It was a great run of Oriole baseball, and we got to kind of see the end of the end pretty much in Detroit, where we got a few extra hours to stay and ponder that we had witnessed the Orioles season coming to an end and the Tigers losing and getting delayed on a flight. Folks have had better weekends in Detroit.
Tigers wouldn't win. Tigers blew the season for the Orioles. Tigers lost on the football field, and we couldn't get the hell out.
Yikes. Rough weekend. Well, thanks you for watching. Steve and Spiro, we're going to be back with more a little later.
Thanks.
Don't change that channel. See ya.